Hi everybody, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface with Azchats episode 59. Quick little recap for everybody. Azchats videos, the more podcasty videos as opposed to visual videos. There's something for you to listen to as opposed to see. So if you want to step away from your computer, crank up the volume and have me in the background as you get on with whatever you need to do, that's perfect. If you want to stay rooted to the monitors, I'll probably put something up for you to have a look at. And because they're Azchats, it might get fruity in the language department, i.e. swearing. Glad we got all those rules sorted out, folks. They're very important indeed. Now, this could potentially be the most controversial Azchats video that I've ever done. And what nonsense decided to make me do this video? Well, it's something that I've been thinking about for a while. And you know, I understand that this video can be very polarizing for people, because we're going to get fanboys out from both sides of the fence here, no doubt. And some are going to be fiercely loyal to their product and whatnot. That's by the by to me. You know, whatever. I just want to do something which I've never done before with an Azchats. And it's always good to evolve. Normally with an Azchats, I take a singular topic of conversation about a single game, and then I go into it. Sometimes I completely go away from the norm, and I'll discuss this, that, and the other. Today, though, I'm actually going to compare two MMORPGs on the marketplace today. And the reason why I'm going to compare these two MMORPGs, and hence the title Redemption, is because they could not be farther apart if they tried. Now, when I compare them, I'm not talking about comparing the physicality of the game. I'm not talking about comparing content, saying, well, this one's got 10 dungeons and this one's got 3, so this one's better. Nothing to do with any of that whatsoever. I am talking about attitude of the game. I'm talking about attitude towards the community. I'm talking about growth, and I'm talking about the future here. Whoa, we know which ones they're going to be, don't we? I'm talking about the World of Warcraft, and I'm talking about Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. Oi, 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 the shit that I'm going to get in the comments, whatever, bring it on, do not care. And the main reason why this Azchats is simply called Redemption is because one of these games has gone through that arc, and the other one of these games is going in the opposite direction. And we all know which is which. So let's get down to the nooks and crannies of it. We know, or most of us, if you've been following my channel for a long time now, will know the story behind both of these MMORPGs. The vast majority of people listening to this will be a World of Warcraft player, or have been a World of Warcraft player, and you're still following my channel, or you're vicariously playing the game through myself with the videos that I do because you don't wish to remain subscribed. There'll also be a proportion of people who are watching this video who like what I've done with Final Fantasy XIV stuff and the Realm Reborn stuff, and I've done some live streams on it, and I've done some videos on it, and I talk very highly of this MMORPG. And what I'm not trying to do, I need to make this perfectly clear, what I'm not trying to do is, in this video, say, my dad's better than your dad. My dad could beat your dad up. Nothing to do with that whatsoever. This is about us. This isn't a video about me. This is a video about us, and laying out some pretty clear informations and letting you make your own determination about it. My determination is going to be perfectly clear. And you know, we'll go into that obviously as the video unfolds. So why Redemption? Because obviously to go through a redemption storyline, you yourself, or the game, or whatever it may be, the protagonist, has to have gone through a period of where shit's just gone wrong. Shit's gone wrong, shit's completely hit the fan. So I'm going to start today's video talking about Final Fantasy XIV. And the reason why I haven't stuck A Realm Reborn at the end of that is because I'm talking about Final Fantasy XIV and not Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn, as it's commonly known by now. And this was an MMORPG released way back in 2010. Not the 2000 13 or 12 or whatever it was, that it eventually came back out again. No, when Final Fantasy 14 came out in 2010, it was without doubt a shoddy, terrible game. I mean, it was utterly abysmal. And from my perspective, I was mortified. First of all, because I absolutely adore the Final Fantasy franchise. I'm not talking about MMOs here. I'm literally just talking about the Final Fantasy franchise. When I first played Final Fantasy VII, it was the breath of fresh air which I'd lived my whole life to get. You know, such was the power of that title. Such was the greatness of that. And I was an RPG lover. I'm somebody who had played the Shining Force games, who had played the Final Fantasy Star games, who literally played any RPG that was made. I would get my grubby mitts on it and play the shit out of it. So when I was told to try out Final Fantasy VII, and I was working at the time and somebody brought a copy in to work for me. I was a very young lad at the time, can I just say. I know I'm an old codger now, but I was young once. And they lent me Final Fantasy VII. I could have fucking cried. Honest to God, when I played that game, I could have fucking cried. The barriers that game broke, not just in game development, in storytelling, in ingenuity, in characterization, it was just nothing short of genius. And it wasn't me that just thought this. This was a hit which became synonymous worldwide for being as good as it was. And it opened the eyes of non-RPG players to this incredible world which could be out there. And then they've literally just gone from strength to strength from there. Maybe nowadays, not so much the juggernaut that they used to be, but the fan base behind the titles is still phenomenal. 8 was amazing. 9, not my favourite, but had a great big following. 10, spectacular. And then 11 brought their first online effort. An MMORPG, Final Fantasy 11. And I played this. I didn't play it on the PC. I didn't actually have a PC in those days. I played it on the Xbox 360, I believe. That's where I actually started to play Final Fantasy 11. And I loved it. I loved the fact that we had this world not just occupied by myself, but, you know, millions of other players. And you could interact with them, and you could team up with them, and you could do hard things with them that, you know, you simply couldn't do on your own. And it was a monster of a title, and an unforgiving title. And back in those days, and we're talking, you know, way back when, but back in those days, it was a big deal. It was a real big deal. And then the World of Warcraft came along, and I didn't play it to begin with. I'd never picked up the World of Warcraft until 2007. Because I had my love, I had my console gaming, and when it came to online MMOs, I had my Final Fantasy XI. I had no reason not to. But when my friends stopped playing Final Fantasy XI, that's when I moved into the World of Warcraft. That's when I got my first PC, and that's when I decided to give it a crack after I'd had my arm tweaked by some people. But this is not the section to talk about World of Warcraft. So Final Fantasy had already a substantial history, is what I'm trying to get at. Not just with gaming, but with MMORPGs. So when Final Fantasy 14 came out, which was the successor to Final Fantasy 11, it would still continue to exist, but this was meant to be the evolution that was in the MMO marketplace, and especially with juggernauts like World of Warcraft at the almost peak of its powers back in 2010, this needed to blow our socks off. This needed to be phenomenal if it was to turn heads away from the biggest hitter in the industry. But not only did it not achieve that, it was abysmal. It was legitimately abysmal on its own. Now, what do you do when a game is so bad? That is the question that Square had to ask themselves. What do you do when you have a community that is behind your franchise simply because it is Final Fantasy, and you produce a turkey of this size, this proportion? And now that's a big question to ask yourself. And it's a big question because we're not just talking about the way that the game has to redefine itself to get into people's good graces. We're talking about fiscal costs. We're talking about development costs as well as this. So there is a much bigger picture which surrounds that. And so what do they do? Well, they immediately stop the subscription. We all got emails from the head, from the president, saying, we are so sorry about the quality of this title. This is not up to the standards that we expect from our, from games going under the Final Fantasy bracket. And we are immediately going to suspend the online subscription. And you do not have to pay to play this game. We're also going to rectify this. We are going to turn this title around and make it into something that you'd be proud to play. So the very first thing that they did was say, we're not taking your money. That is unbelievable. You have to understand this, people. That is unbelievable. That is unprecedented in today's marketplace, in today's society. Complete and utterly unprecedented. Because it wasn't up to the standards that we expected, and also they clearly understood, no, we will not take any more money from you. You've bought the game. We're really sorry. We will suspend the subscription fee. Unreal. But that's not where that story ends. It's not as if they said, and then suddenly everything turned around and it was great and, it started to develop its own community. No. We then got a further email a little bit down the line, not far off though, for only a few weeks later saying, stuff ain't great. Really, stuff isn't good. We're getting rid of the team. We are getting rid of the team and we are bringing in a new team of people to sort this out. Again, it's another massive, massive thing that goes alongside that. We are going to bring in a whole new team. We're going to get this shit sorted. So they bring in the new team. And by new team, I am, of course, referring to Yoshida, the person who changed this around. And when he came on board, again, it wasn't just a simple matter of saying, right, we've got a new team behind it. We've changed things around. Everything's great again. No. After a long time, and I'm talking several months of trying to, inverted commas, fix the game. And I came back periodically to see if I could get into it. And I never could. It was just so bad. You had to experience it to believe it. We suddenly got another round of emails several months later saying, we're pulling the game. We are pulling the game and we are rebuilding it. Rebuilding it. This is, again, we are talking unprecedented steps here. We can't fix it in its current state. Yoshida wanted a new engine. He wanted to develop he wanted to build it from a new engine. The technology that existed wasn't going to work with what he had planned. So they had to pull the game. So what they did is they tied off the story for people that were playing the game. And they kind of destroyed huge segments of the game. And that's where the story ended there. And the game literally stopped. You couldn't log on to it anymore. It was removed. It was gone. The game was pulled. And they were working furiously to create a new game. So, we then heard about Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. That was the new branding that was going to go onto this title. A reworked title for a reworked game. And I did some beta testing on it. And I went in with a very bad attitude. And I am quite happy to admit that. I went in with a piss poor attitude because I was so frustrated with what we had originally. I was so annoyed with that. I was pissed off with World of Warcraft as well and its decline. And I definitely had a chip on my shoulder about why is everything, I love falling to fucking shit when it comes to gaming. I think I was playing Rift at the time. That was the MMORPG that I was playing. A game that I've never got anything bad to say about, actually. Really enjoyed Rift. But I gave Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn, the beta, a short trial. Not much to start with, and I kind of like, nah, they've turned a shit game into an okay game, and just sort of left it at that. And that was so unfair. And the reason why that was so unfair is because I didn't actually really give it a proper go. You know, I did a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I hardly spent any time, and I wasn't really concentrating on what I was doing anyway because of this chip on my shoulder. So I thought to myself, look, it's only fair I actually give this some proper concentration. And because I purchased the original game, that's why I could join the beta testing. So I went back onto it, and I started to test it properly, and I was just like, hold on a second. This is actually not half bad at all. This is really not half bad. They completely revamped the combat system. The world had changed. Graphically it looked gorgeous. The spell effects and all that was just epic. And then we had lots and lots and lots of depth to it. And I was just like, hold on, they're onto something here. They really are onto something here. And lo and behold, they get ready to relaunch as Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn, and they think about 500,000 people are going to return to the game. One thing that it didn't take into consideration was the fact that their community was phenomenal. They had a huge community behind it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, based upon not just the online functions of it, but based upon the Final Fantasy brand. Now, the reason why I'm really highlighting what I'm saying here is it's going to come back that later on in the video when I'm talking about the other game. Okay? So when they release it, instead of the 500,000 predicted people that they thought were going to come back, and I don't even think they thought it was going to be that high, their servers were ready for 500,000 people. But if your servers are ready for 500,000 people, obviously your server's going to be of a capacity where you're thinking, we need to just make sure we have enough room for everybody. So if you're saying we expected 500,000 people to be back, the honest answer is you're probably thinking about 3, 4 maybe. But no, 1.2 million people attempted to log into the game, and their servers couldn't cope. So suddenly, they were on the flip side of the coin. Instead of releasing a terrible game that nobody wanted to play, they'd actually released a really, really good revamped game that they hadn't got enough room for all the people that wanted to play. And because of people hearing through word of mouth that this vamping of the title had been very successful indeed, and actually this game that they were going to release was really, really good, and nothing like the nonsense that we'd had before. That's why people were desperately trying to get into the title. So they had to work frantically to get new servers up. They had to work around the clock to make sure people actually had an opportunity to play. But it was all the right thing, it's all the right reasons. If you're going to have a problem on launch, it wasn't that servers were unstable or anything like that. It was just there were too many people wanting to log in. That was their issue. And since its relaunch, and since its revamping to Realm Reborn, that game has gone from strength to strength. It's gone to a degree now where they've just gone into their 5 millionth registered account. That's not subscribers, people. That's registered account. There's lots of sort of clippets around the internet saying Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn's on 5 million subscribers. No. It's on 5 million registered users. I think the World of Warcraft has something like 100 million registered users. There aren't 100 million people playing the World of Warcraft. But I think the sub numbers are somewhere around the 2.5 million mark at the moment. It's around about there. We'll get to find out at some degree. But it had a huge push. And not only did it have a huge push and start to grow and grow and grow, but when they released their first expansion pack for it, Heaven's Ward, then it went into the stratosphere. It absolutely exploded. They had 1 million accounts registered since February to the middle of this year or so. So it was a vastly, vastly popular title. And there's reasons why it's popular. The popularity of it is, first of all, due to the contents of it. Not comparing contents, I'm just saying the contents of the original game and also Heaven's Ward, the depth to it, and also that shit be going wrong in other areas and people are looking for alternatives to play. So we have got a literal Cinderella story for an MMORPG. A game which was simply not good enough. Instead of them just going, nah, keep on charging them a subscription. We'll keep on working, trying to tweak it. Push out a few patches here and there. No. They made the ballsy right decision. They stopped subscriptions. They said it's not fair for you to pay for our mistakes. It's not fair. We're going to revamp the game. Couldn't revamp the game. We're pulling it down. We're going to redo it because you deserve better than this. And they gave us better. And I'm still subscribed to the title. I love the title. There's still so much I've got to do. I'm simply so busy at the moment. I don't have the time that I want to spend on it. And I want to spend a lot of quality time going down on Final Fantasy XIV. Really do. Maybe I will get the opportunity soon. Who knows? So the redemption of this title is clear. It's absolutely crystal clear. Through some ballsy, amazing decisions by the developers, their community was treated properly, fairly, and not only that, they eventually got the title that they deserved. And my God, is it a fucking brilliant title. And we have to now go to the flip side, folks. This is the side that a lot of people are going to get pissy with me about, and I don't care. Look, I call a spade a spade. It's the way that I've developed my channel, and you're just going to have to hashtag deal with it. We have to go now to the World of Warcraft. And boy, are we seeing the complete opposite in the World of Warcraft right now. Now, just as I did with Final Fantasy, the history of WoW speaks for itself. Coming out in 2004, again, just breaking the mold when it came to RPGs. A game which offered phenomenal teaming up, the MMO aspect of it was just outstanding. Tough content, challenging content. The way that each class had its own separate feel and identity and how people really gravitated towards that, and the story, the lore, the ethos around it. That's, you can't give that kind of stuff enough credit. You really cannot give that stuff enough credit. Because games fall by the wayside when they don't have a great structure behind it. They fall by the wayside when they don't have a compelling storyline and they don't have compelling factions or characters or races. They fall by the wayside and they become what we have at the moment, which is a notion of generic MMORPGs out there. An ocean of them. You can throw a stone and hit a generic RPG. Not going to be cruel enough to name some, but we all know, we could all spew some out. Just think now on the top of your head, just spew some out, some generic MMORPGs on the marketplace, and then look at their lore behind them. And then you can go to the other side of the scale and then look at ones which have the lore and have the title, the branding behind it, and then don't do it properly. And we have stuff like SWTOR, which is kind of like the best single player or one of the greatest single player experiences you'll ever have in an MMO. But the fucking thing's an MMO at the end of the day. And that's kind of like your downfall. So we can go the other side. But the World of Warcraft was built on a foundation of just pure brilliance. And it went from strength to strength. This is a game which became the mother of all juggernauts when it came to subscriptions. They absolutely exploded when it came to their first expansion, the Burning Crusade. People that had dealt with Warcraft lore for years and years were suddenly experiencing environments which they'd never even in their wildest dreams probably imagined they would go to. Outland, stuff like that. Northrend going into Wrath of the Lich King to actually challenge Arthas And the way that Warcraft 3 had finished, and that story was so untold, and now you have the opportunity to pick it up in an MMORPG form. And those expansions, they didn't let us down at all. They were fucking amazing. I remember going through the Dark Portal for the very first time. And when I arrived in Hellfire Peninsula, I had to really struggle not to say Tanaan Jungle. When I arrived in Hellfire Peninsula, and suddenly the size of the Dark Portal on this side compared to the size of the Dark Portal on the Azerothian side, and just what lay in front of me, this army of Legion trying to fight their way up the stairs and through the portal into Azeroth, I was undone, my lady. Undone. Jaw dropped, cock hardened, the job lot. It was just like, holy shit, my body is ready. And it was. And for years and years, I let this game dominate me in every single way that it wanted to do. And a few cracks appeared in Cataclysm. They had put so much effort, and if you saw my recent Azchats, it was called In Defense of Cataclysm. They had put so much effort into revamping the world and revamping the questing and every bit of gear that went alongside that, and adding the areas which were non-accessible before to make this land complete, that they kind of forgot about Endgame. They really kind of forgot about Endgame, and that's where a few issues came to be. So I try and be as lenient as I possibly can with Cataclysm, because I always think their heart was in the right place. And there was definitely not a slacking off of work, because the amount of work and effort which had gone into creating the new Azeroth was unreal. Absolutely unreal. And then we had this really bizarre change of pace when it came to Mists of Pandaria. We had always been used to dealing with major threats within the world of Warcraft. Illidan, Arthas, Deathwing, and that's what we expect, and that's what I think a lot of people want from their expansions. We're probably hoping we're going to go off and deal with Ashara next, or maybe some of the old gods, or the Titans, or the Emerald Nightmare, etc. Stuff which is now going to be coming in Legion, but we'll get to that later on. But that's what we were looking for, and instead they decided to stick us on an isle with some lazy ass pandas, and nothing really happened, and the whole structure of the expansion was terrible. We had 4 patches within the first year, 2 of them okay, well, one of them excellent, one of them very good, or decent at least, and then 2 of them pretty meh. And then nothing for 14 months, and that kind of structuring contributed to a huge drop-off of figures. But even the World of Warcraft, with a huge drop-off of figures, and I think it went down at its lowest to 6.8 million in MOP, was still staggeringly high. That is the power of the community. That is the power of what a community which supports a product can bring to the table. And when Warlords of Draenor came out, and because the beta had been very well received, there seemed to be some very good ideas coming into the game. They certainly announced a very good expansion at BlizzCon 2013, and what a lot of people wouldn't have seen was how much was getting cut out of it during the beta process. But even with that in mind, you were still thinking, okay, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone, and that's gone. But if they support the expansion, then we'll be okay. As long as they support it, as long as they say, right, 6.1 comes out, then you go to Farallon, then you get this. As long as they have things which are going to eventually replace the content which is lost, then we can cope with that. We can deal with that. And yet what we got was just so far to the extreme away from that. It's absolutely unreal. Now, if you followed my channel for some time, I've said, I think, all that I need to say about Warlords of Draenor. I'm not going to repeat myself and go into everything that it failed in. It's very clear for us to see where this expansion goes wrong. My biggest disappointment, let's use the word disappointment, with WoD is not necessarily the content, which is flat. It's not necessarily the fact that so many things got dropped, which I really wanted to see in. What got me and what separates it to the polar opposite of Final Fantasy is how Blizzard gave up. That is my biggest disappointment with this expansion. It's the thing which gets my goat the most. It's the thing which upsets me, angers me, frustrates me. I can put as many superlatives, adjectives there as you like. But that is what gets me. That is really what gets me. I say this so many times when I talk about content for games and when I talk about being forgiving mistakes. When you can see how hard a development team is trying, you can forgive when things don't hit the mark. You can, because you're saying, right, they've tried so hard to do this, but it just hasn't quite worked. Sound familiar? That's kind of how I attribute Cataclysm. Because they did try so hard with that expansion, but the end game didn't work. But all the leveling up, if you decided to level up from level 1, would have been amazing for you. Absolutely amazing. So when you see that heart, when you see that passion and drive in a creative team, if stuff doesn't work out, you're kind of a bit more lenient. You're a bit more, okay, let's see what they can produce next time. Not everything in Final Fantasy XIV to me works, but for all the stuff to me that doesn't work, all the stuff that does kind of forgives that. No, going back, it's the lack of fight. It's the lack of anything with Warlords. Where was that person, and do they exist, that when 6.1 was put on the table as a patch, and when 6.2 was put on the table as a patch, where was that person that turned around and said, this is not good enough for Blizzard Entertainment? This is not of the standard and the quality of Blizzard Entertainment. This is not good enough for our wonderful, beautiful community. Who was that person? Do they exist? And if they did exist, they got shot down. And if they didn't exist, shame on Blizzard. Where was the fight? I mean, we have all these excuses which come out now. And they really frustrate me even more. Where you got certain developers talking about how proud they are of their work in this expansion. And I think the only genuine people that can be proud of their work in this expansion are the music department, the guys that did the music for this, the guys that did the art, and I'm talking environmental, and I'm talking character. Those people should be very, very proud. Those men and ladies should be absolutely ecstatic at the work that they put in, because the music is phenomenal and the art is absolutely terrific. But when a team is coming in with the content, when a team's coming in who's deciding what goes into where in the outside world, after you level up your character, which sadly takes such a short period of time, it was so lacking. Where was the fight? Where were the ideas? Where was the people, like I said, coming forward and saying, this is not good enough? We can't just give them more fucking AP areas or open up more AP areas for them in 6.1. They physically need something to do. Tom Chilton talked about Farallon wasn't in the game because they didn't feel it fit into the story. It is a fantasy MMORPG. If you can't fit an island, a mystical magical island, or just an island into a mythical magical land and create something for that, there is something wrong with you. There is something wrong with your team that can't come up with an idea for Farallon. So that I don't buy for one moment. Just again, silly excuses instead of admission. Legitimate admission. And I'm not talking about Renee admission. I'm not talking about where in one Q&A a developer can sound apologetic like Ian did when he did his Q&A, and then a couple of weeks later you've got Corey Stockton completely turning what he said on its head. Oh no, we did two massive patches, 6.1 and 6.2. Yet 2 weeks prior, Ian Hazacostas said we shouldn't have even called patch 6.1 a major patch. It should have been patch 6.0.5 and should have just come in as a hotfix. You know, so you kind of, the apology which went into that Q&A, or at least the admission which went into that Q&A, kind of felt very much like the Shell guy in South Park. Sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. It just felt completely disingenuous. It didn't hold any merit anymore. So that whole aspect of just giving up on an expansion. When you have such a powerful community like the World of Warcraft does, when you see what this community can do, and bear in mind, from the 6.8 million subscribers that it was down to at the end of Mists of Pandaria, to the fact that it exploded back up to 10 million for the beginning of Warlords of Draenor, shows the power of the World of Warcraft community. It shows how much this community wants to back and support Blizzard. So if you have that kind of community behind you, if you have that kind of support behind you, wouldn't you want, as an employee who works on the World of Warcraft, wouldn't you want, as a developer that creates content and things for the game, wouldn't you want to repay these people? Wouldn't you want to return and reward their loyalty, their huge, unbelievable, colossal loyalty? And then you give up on the expansion. Returning back to Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn for a second, they recently had their 2-year anniversary event. And in this 2-year anniversary event, something, again, unprecedented happened within it. It just looked like a short kind of a quest line that when you completed it, you're rewarded with a couple of little pets and maybe an object or two. But where this story took you, after you went to your generic people, talk to them, it ended up taking you into a tower. I can't remember what floor it was. I can only imagine the floor of the tower relates to the floor in the building that the Final Fantasy XIV team worked for. And it was there that you actually met Yoshida, the lead game developer for the world for Final Fantasy XIV. You met him in-game. They created him in-game. And this was fourth wall breaking. He was literally talking to you and talking about the fact of their failures in Final Fantasy XIV when it first came out. And speaking of their arrogance and the fact that they thought they could do this and they thought that and they were wrong. And the community put them right. And the support of the community made them strive to make things better. It was an incredible, absolutely incredible piece of content. And then you just have to flip now to the World of Warcraft. Again, you have developer after developer just making up excuses. Or talking about, yeah, well, we don't want to talk about negativity anymore. And you have all this very kind of just apathetic behaviour. Nobody really stepping forward with a proper set of balls and saying it was simply not good enough. Which is what needed to be said, because you can't just give up on an expansion. You have to fight for your community. You have to fight and say to them, look, stuff is going wrong, Legion's coming out, but let's just put Legion on the back burner for a bit because we need to sort this expansion out for people. We need to make this playable for them. You need to, put aside the fact that they're just thinking with wallets and purses. They need to think, right, okay, expansions bring more people back, which is more money, but we've got to put that to the side. Like Final Fantasy XIV did when they stopped the subscription fee. They've got to put that to the side and say, we need to create more content. We need to create diverse content. We need to put something in extra for this community. This community which stands by us. Because look what's happening now. People are leaving hand over fist. The 10 million has become 5.6 million in 6 months. And that's people making their feelings perfectly clear about this. And if Blizzard are always going to then just say, right, fine, we'll dump this expansion, like they had the 14-month drought with Mists of Pandaria, and we'll work on the next one. And that's going to become the lifetime excuse. It's going to become the generic excuse after everything. Why aren't we getting any content, Blizz? We're working on the next one. So in that recent interview that Blizz did, and you have to listen to it properly to understand the context in which Tom Chilton said. But right at the end, just before the interview ended, where he said, yeah, we're already, working on the next one. We're already thinking about the next one. And that rubbed people up the wrong way. But I feel a little bit sorry for Tom in that instance, because he was really kind of taken out of context. But the reason why people were so wound up is because they don't really want to hear about the next big thing. People want you to concentrate and make sure that the current thing is what they deserve. So it's just so weird to see complete polarizing attitudes when it comes to the game. Literally, when I say the game, I'm talking about the MMORPG genre. One company desperate to regain the respect of their community, that's dedicated to making sure that the people who are in the game currently are fully rewarded by the fact that they give you rewards just through logging in. If you're a subscriber for X amount of time, then you qualify and you just get rewards, armors, mounts, things which can help you in game, blah, 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 free race changes, yada, yada, yada. And another game which is pulling content out of its game to put onto a Blizzard store with mount after mount after mount, and then who just simply gives up on expansions. So, because this whole thing's about redemption, I have to end more positively. And I can end more positively. Because what is coming up? We've got Legion coming up for the World of Warcraft. Now, very much like the box art, Illidan fronts Legion. And Illidan is a character who we have wanted for years and years and years to have a redemption storyline. To have that chance to show off that although what he did was pretty wrong, his motivations were altruistic. His motivations were driven to just defeating the Legion and not what it actually turned into being. And we want that redemption storyline to happen. And although Blizzard seem to be learning a little bit through their levels of communication, and I do think there's way too much kind of egotistical communication going on at the moment. Tweets which are just nonsensical coming from their Blizzard accounts, where they're just back and forthing between people. People don't need to see that. They don't need to, especially when the game is in such a pit at the moment, they don't need to see you clowning around on Twitter with each other. That just really gives the wrong impression. It just says to you, yeah, we're having a great time over here. Meanwhile, you're playing a piece of shit. And you're paying for it. They don't need to see that. They just need communication to be concise when it is concise. I have to use you. I'm sorry, Chris G. Robinson, for always using it as an example, but you are the perfect example of how communication should be. When you've got something to say and show, you show it. When you've got something that you want feedback on that is not a definite within the game, you show it and you say, can I have some feedback? Not going to go in the game necessarily, but with something that we're looking for. And the way that he communicates is fantastic. And the way that he communicates gets that level of communication back from the player in a proper constructive manner. Not this ego-driven, I've got a job at Blizz, let's get my face all over the internet, I want to be E-famous, my EP and groans nonsense, which we seem to have from way too many developers nowadays. Especially when the game is in the state that it is. So returning to the positive, returning back to that positive vibe that we need to do, they have said a few things about Legion. They made the correct choice not to go into too much because of the way that they completely falsely sold Warlords of Draenor at BlizzCon 2013. And because of all the things which we know are going to come in, I mean, just off the top of my head, and there are going to be a few things I miss off here. We've got Illidan, of course. We've got the Tomb of Sargeras. We've got the Legion coming back. We've got Gul'dan. We've got Thingamajiggy and Turellion coming back. Windrunner and Turellion coming back. We've got the Emerald Dream, the Emerald Nightmare. We've got Titans getting involved. We've got hints of Ashara. Look, that's like, whoa. Maybe Legion is going to be that redemption. Maybe Blizzard are just trying to, brush things under the carpet as they work frantically on producing something which may turn out to be the redemption storyline for the World of Warcraft. But that can only happen if they abandon this silly structure that they have in Warlords of Draenor, where they produce an expansion, maybe do a couple of patches, and then move into the next expansion. Because the work is never going to be done on that. They're only going to concentrate on the main patch, the main release patch, and then the other stuff is going to get abandoned, like it has in WoD. It's going to be haphazard, it's going to be sloppy, and they're just going to say, yeah, well, that'll just take them through for a year, fuck it, and then when we get release another expansion, it'll bolster numbers again. The problem with getting bit, and we have been bit so many times by Blizzard, is every time that we get bit by them, they lose the faith of the community. So the people that are always teetering on the edge, when they get bit, they go. As we're seen by the huge subscription drop-off. And then every time they bite again, and kind of like, I don't want to use the word promise, but they definitely insinuate the world. And then, you know, deliver-wise, not so much. But when they do that, even the most staunch of World of Warcraft supporters is at least becoming aware of the fact that maybe Blizzard ain't quite telling stuff the way it should be told. And when that happens, you're in trouble, because that is your fiercest loyalist supporter. And if they are starting to feel cheated, if they are starting to feel let down, and you begin to lose them, that's when the game free falls into the generic MMO quagmire, which is out there, which we can throw a stone and hit one from anywhere in any direction. And I think if World of Warcraft follows the current structure, that is where they'll go. And very quickly indeed. Spikes for releases, but huge plummets. And then the spikes will get smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's the way that it will go. So, with such a powerful community behind it, with the strength of the brand that they've got, can we please see proper effort put into the game? And I mean proper effort throughout the course of the whole expansion. Can you please respect the people who are still subscribing throughout the course of the year? Because they're the fiercest loyalists. They're the fiercest, staunchest supporters of yours that you really need to reward, and you really need to value. So, redemption. World of Warcraft can get it in Legion if their true motivations is to bring the game back up to scratch and not do what they've done with WoD and just turn it into a 12-month, 18-month subscription type of expansion. Final Fantasy XIV Realm Reborn is an unrivaled redemption storyline of a community. And even a game, let's just play devil's advocate with them. Let's say their motivations are money and profit with Square Enix as well. At least one thing that they've recognised is the best way to retain people is make sure they have oodles to do. They've got oodles to do and oodles of choices with which to have a stab at. And that, to me, I can take all day long. All day, every day. If that is their attitude to getting money from me. Because it gives me whatever options I need to do to have fun within the game. So, I've got a question for you, for all the people who have managed to stay to this point in the video. Is Legion going to be the redemption of the World of Warcraft? Or is it now too far gone and just too profit driven to actually place the community as a valued asset instead of the community's wallet? I'd be very interested to see what you guys and gals have to say in the comments down below. And because this has proven to be quite a long Azchats, I suppose I have to throw some sort of reward out there for the chaps and chapesses who have stayed. So if you have made it to this point in the video, I would like to say to you, jailbait selfie. Just put that in the comments, get everybody confused. So I hope you enjoyed the vid, and if you did, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Those links are in the description down below, and I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care, everybody. Bye-bye.